Somali Muslims take over small Tennessee town and force absolute hell on terrified Christians. Muslims continue to prove they have little intentions of integrating into modern civilization after fleeing their war-torn countries, as they continue to force Islam and Sharia law onto unassuming Americans. Cities across America where migrants have been allowed to invade are rapidly transforming into Sharia swamps. Just take a look at the startling transformation of cities like Dearborn and Minneapolis, as many Americans were left in shock and horror following the Minnesota woman being violently shot down by a Somali Muslim cop. Now Somali migrants have set their sights on another American city to invade. Desperate Tennessee residents are frantically crying out for help, as the small town they once loved and cherished is being completely overrun by hordes of nasty Muslim migrants, who have now started targeting local Christians with violent Islamic crimes. The country of Somalia is a third world country Sharia craphole that hasn't had a functioning government in over 20 years. Muslim jihadists now completely rule the country through the iron fist of Sharia law, where the Al-Qaeda affiliate Al-Shabaab runs rampant and jihadi leadership actively train locals to carry out terror attacks on the United States. While it would be wise to keep these terrorists confined to Somalia as much as possible, liberals keep advocating to bring Somali Muslims to America by the thousands, where hordes of Somalis are dumped into American cities annually, much to the horror of Americans across the country, and unfortunately for the residents of Shelbyville, Tennessee, a small American town about an hour's drive from Nashville. They are now becoming intimately acquainted with exactly what Sharia law and Islam teaches, after third world migrants were dropped into their town overnight. At first glance, the small Tennessee town that's nestled in the middle of the state seems like your typical sleepy southern hamlet similar to Mayberry. There's a local sheriff and movie theater, where May locals attend church as the town is right smack in the middle of America's Bible Belt. But after hordes of Somali migrants started arriving at an alarming rate in their traditional Islamic garb, locals began to notice changes the Muslims began to force onto the populace. As shortly after arriving a culture clash began to immediately ensue between the locals and migrants. They've had an impact here. Unfortunately, it's not been a good impact, said Brian Mosley, a reporter for the local Shelbyville Times-Gazette stated. I found that there was just an enormous culture clash going on here, he said. The Somalis were, according to a lot of the people I talked to here, were being very, very rude, inconsiderate, very demanding. They would go into stores and haggle over prices. They would also demand to see a male salesperson, would not deal with women in stores. Their culture is totally alien to anything the residents are used to, Mosley added. But unfortunately for locals, a culture clash would soon be the least of their concerns after a series of violent crimes were taken out at the hands of these Somali migrants. Several months ago, the liberal media completely whitewashed a series of events where 3 churches were shot up by Muslims. Jihad Watch was the only one to even report on the story, where AK-47s were used to shatter the windows of multiple churches in the area. They reported, a Muslim shoots up 3 churches and nothing is said about his motive or his Islamic identity. Would the same courtesy be shown a Christian who shot up 3 mosques? Why the cover-up? Who is responsible for it? 3 churches were shot up in the Shelbyville, TN area starting on the night of the 27th of September, 2016. The Horse Mountain Church of Christ was shot 16 more times the night of the 29th of September. The Philippi United Methodist Church along with another church was also struck by 7.62x39 rounds on the 29th. 7.62x39 rounds are consistent with an AK-47 or a SKS rifle. The Bedford County Agriculture Center was also attacked with gunfire on the 29th, shattering the front glass. There were also reports of utility boxes being shot during this time. Somali Muslims are proving to be the most violent migrants due to the vicious jihadist-ruled country they plucked from before making their way to the United States. Somali Muslims are not only overtaking Shelbyville and forcing Sharia onto the populace, but the city of Minneapolis as well. In addition to the disturbing headlines of the Somali cop gunning down a white woman last week, Somali migrants completely took over a small Minnesota white neighborhood several months back and started threatening to rape and murder females who were standing in their yards. As we previously reported, local reports reveal that white woman was just minding her own business outside of her home when a mob of migrant males approached her and began screaming disparaging comments at her, threatening to rape and kill her. KSTP-TV interviewed the victim, where she relayed her horror about the incident that transpired in her neighborhood. They were screaming at the house that they were going to kidnap me and they were going to rape me, one Minneapolis resident told KSTP-TV. It was a very traumatizing experience. The unnamed woman wasn't the only one targeted with a barrage of terroristic threats, as the mob made their way around the upscale neighborhood yelling comments at numerous homeowners, while driving their vehicles onto the sidewalks and lawns while shooting off bottle rockets and screaming. We as Americans must do everything we can to sound the alarm bells as the liberal media continues to do everything in their power to bury events such as this, while at the same time advocating to bring dump off thousands of more third world country savages into American cities at an alarming rate, while we have President Trump doing everything in his power to keep these terrorists out of our country. Things could quickly go from bad to worse once we have another Muslim-loving liberal president in office.